Good evening. My name is Amy Ju, a member of the PSC Anti-Bullying Committee, and I want to welcome you to tonight's session on academic bullying and the STEM fields. We're very honored and privileged to have a guest speaker tonight. His name is Dr. Morteza Mahmoudi, and I will be telling you a little bit more about him after our brief announcements. So we're on Zoom. We ask that everyone please remain muted if you're not speaking. If you do have a questions, feel free to type it into the chat or raise your Zoom hand, and we will take all questions at the end of the presentation. We will be recording tonight's presentation and be posting it up on our PSC anti-bullying webpage. As we begin tonight's session, let's go with a reading of our PSC community norms and practices. These norms and practices are aspirational goals for our union. So please follow along as I read them out loud. Respect for everyone's worth is fundamental to a university and particularly to CUNY, which was founded on principles of inclusion. We commit ourselves to nurture a work environment that honors the dignity of all, is respectful and free from discrimination, harassment, or bullying. And we therefore agree to respect each other's differences and to create a healthy, safe, and rewarding environment that nurtures, challenges, and supports the community. In order for our community to function in this way, it is useful for its individual members to make the following commitments. 1. I commit to conduct that is mutually respectful and not discriminatory, harassing, bullying, or threatening. 2. I take responsibility for my actions and my personal perspectives, recognizing that there may be disagreements with others. 3. I will respect everyone's contributions and honor the roles and responsibilities of all members through my words and actions. 4. I will be mindful and reflect on how I might be using or misusing my power and privilege in my interactions. 5. I will intend to be inclusive and support others with the same respect and compassion that I want for myself. 6. I am willing to be an active ally, an upstander, by speaking, intervening, or acting on behalf of a person being attacked or bullied. 7. I will seek to understand others and assume best intentions in all interactions. 8. I will seek to understand other perspectives and avoid making assumptions. 9. I commit to listen actively and with compassion at the workplace and in all union meetings. So let me introduce for you our speaker tonight is Dr. Morteza Mahmoudi. He's an associate professor at the Department of Radiology and Precision Health Program at Michigan State University. His research is focused on investigating overlooked factors in nanomedicine and academic bullying and harassment. He has received graduate and postgraduate trainings in countries in Iran, Ireland, Switzerland, and in the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and at the Stanford School of Medicine. Prior to coming to Michigan State University, he was an assistant professor at Harvard, and he is among highly cited researchers, according to Clarivate Analytics. And he also co-founded the academic parity movement to ensure that no researcher would suffer from violence, discrimination, or academic bullying without sufficient support. So I'm going to hand it over to our speaker, Morteza. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Amy, for the kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. It's a great honor to be here with you today. So, yeah, a little bit about the work that we do in the lab. So, basically, my lab has 4 lines of research. The first one is in nanomedicine, where we try to kind of understand the biological identity of nanoparticles and use nanotechnologies for early detection of catastrophic diseases. The second one is regenerative medicine, where we basically focused on development of engineered materials for cardiac regeneration. We specifically focused on regenerating heart tissue after myocardial infarction or heart attack. And we also actively working on social sciences, which has two branches. The first one is gender imbalances in academic science. And we are very interested in understanding the mechanistic reasons behind those gender imbalances that we suffer from, and also the issue of academic bullying and harassment. And today I'm going to talk in detail about the work that we do in the field of academic bullying and harassment. So the very I would say general definition for academic bullying is that academic bullying is a violation of human rights in an academic setting. And we do have a very well-defined contextual behaviors of academic bullying and harassment in basically workplace in general. And in academia, we have an additional contextual behaviors, including the bad behaviors on unethical actions over recommendations or threatening over the jobs of the individual, or basically remove their findings and fundings. And at the institutional level, it means that covering up for bullies, having limited options to targets to basically get supported and healed, and also force targets to leave institution or force them to use code of silence. So now the issue is that we had academic bullying and harassment for many years now. It's been a century. Even if we go back to Albert Einstein's age, we see that at that time, when he basically released his ideas about general relativity, he got targeted by many people ridiculing his ideas out of prejudice and denial. In fact, 100 people gathered together and wrote a book about ridiculing his ideas. And Einstein's response was simple and easy. He mentioned that why 100 authors? If I were wrong, only one author or only one person should be fine. To basically respond to those ideas. So I think that he was talking about ganging up against the target, which we call it today as academic mobbing. And you can see that we still have this problem at high level. Like a few years ago, we had a resignation of Eric Lander from White House because of the accusation of bullying and harassment. Now, the major question is that why we still have this issue in academic science. We are in academia, we are supposed to solve the problem, yet the very fundamental problem of academic bullying and harassment cannot be solved by us. So there are a wide range of reasons that we have the evolving effects of academic bullying and harassment, and we are not in a position to address that until we basically do certain actions that I'll talk about in detail. But let's get focused now about the underlying mechanism and root causes that we have this problem. So the very first reason is that, unfortunately, our research is set up in a way that bullies and harassers can thrive. And we also witness patterns that mediocre scientists that use academic bullying, they can use it as a tool to get to the top and be untouchable. So we have the issue of many successful mediocre scientists to be at the star scientist position, not because they are a star scientist, but because they are using bullying as a career tool. The other thing that we have, the issue that we have in the field, is the lack of understanding of the contextual behaviors of academic bullying and harassment, and also making a clear line between academic bullying and academic freedom. So it's a big gray area between these two. So if we look at the academic freedom, we know that academic freedom means that everyone can basically freely discuss their ideas, their intellectual debates without any fear of retaliation of any kind. They can have freedom in doing studies, and draw conclusion and basically publish those. And they have a freedom to challenge each other's basically ideas and views and insights without basically attacking their dignity. On the other hand, academic bullying means using academic power to basically get the entire credit over authorship or IP, or being involved in coercive controls, being involved in ganging up against someone in an unethical way, and doing retaliation over complaint about the actions and behaviors, and also threatening scientists over their visa status or their academic positions, funding, and their careers. The other issue that we have is the overemphasis on academic index. For example, on H index or number of publication or impact factors. And this is getting more problematic because academic index is supposed to be a measure for scientific progresses. But now what we see is that academic index is being a scientific goal for many scientists. And according to Goodhart's law, when a measure becomes a target, then it ceases to be a good measure. The other problem is the helpless nature of the targets. They are at the barrel of the power structure in academia. And you can imagine if they are minorities or basically international students or scholars, then they are more vulnerable to bullying behaviors. We also have a problem with the funding in two sides. The first one is that many of the perpetrators are well funded, so they are being protected by universities because of those fundings. And on the other side, the universities basically have no structural funding to support targets when they get into the bullying situation. And also the lack of insights on the long term of academic bullying and harassment, which can end up with academic misconducts and also using scientists moving from like scientific realm to other liaisons. The other issue that is very highlighted in the United States is the lack of strong law against academic bullying and harassment. So I had the privilege to talk with tens of lawyers across different states. And the message that I've got from them was kind of very easy, that academic bullying and harassment is unethical, but it's not illegal. The other issue that we have is the lack of psychological knowledge. Basically, we don't know how health targets to heal. And the healing process is super important in the field. The reason is that if we leave targets unhealed, there's a great risk that when they get to the power position, they show bullying behaviors. So that's a real problem that we are suffering right now in terms of the psychological knowledge and help to the targets. The other issue that we have is the lack of fair and unbiased internal investigation by institutions, and there are many reasons for that. The very first reason is that there is no accountability or very limited accountability over the members of the internal investigation committee over their actions and decisions. We have universities' reputation at stake. And also, like I mentioned, they have limited options to provide targets. And many of the perpetrators have connections that can affect the outcomes of the internal committee investigation. The other issue that we have is the willingness to tolerate bullying behaviors. And there are many a spectrum of reasons for that. One of them is the basically scandals of bullying reports that come to the news that shows huge number of retaliatory actions against targets who speak up. So it's a fear of retaliation. And when it comes to international students, they also have a fear of visa cancellation and other issues that they are encountered with. And last but not least is the confidentiality of the outcomes. Unless it comes to the news or there would be a legal complaint about the case remains confidential at the university level, and that's why we have limited accountability over members of the internal investigation committee. Now the question is that in this situation, what targets do? Fight, flight, or they tolerate the situation? Unfortunately, studies show that they tolerate the situation and have to deal with a wide range of side effects. The problem, 10 years ago, was that the studies show that most of those side effects targets only a person that are in the situation. But now we know that basically the side effects can also affect the people that are on the circle of influence of the target as well, including their family, and also based on their expertise, the people that they are basically interacting with. For example, if we have toxic environment in healthcare system or in hospitals, patients even pay the price, because now we have evidence that toxic behavior among doctors can basically increase the number of wrong medical decisions that otherwise could be avoided. And we also know that there are many other side effects that affect the entire scientific community as a whole. For example, we know that bullying and harassment can cause reduction in academic workforce, and many talented people in academia leave institutions and basically go to industry for that reason. And we have hindering of the progress of star scientists, and academic bullying and harassment is one of the reasons for that. And we have problem in increasing the file drawer problem, which is publishing only positive results and positive outcomes and cherry pick up the results, which is what is needed, unfortunately, by many of the funding resources, and also non-written requirement for many of the high impact journals. So that's why a toxic lab may encourage basically members or force them to increase the file drawer problem. And like I mentioned, last but not least is leaving targets unhealed, which is make universities companies for production of future bullies, because if they basically left unhealed, then there's a great odds that they can show bullying behaviors when they reach to the power position. So now in this situation, what we can do, in order to address academic bullying and harassment, many people at different roles and positions tried different options. For example, many scientists basically investigated the contextual behaviors of bullying and harassment in their community and published the data. Reporters shed more light on the scandals of bullying and harassment that happens. Many lab leaders basically try to cover their insight about bullying and harassment. And there are lots of surveys for better understanding of bullying and harassment in different disciplines. For example, we have done a survey a couple of years ago, a global survey to better understand the contextual behaviors of academic bullying and harassment, and we got over 2,000 participants. And the outcomes was the major outcomes that we had was using code of silence among the targets. We found that over 70% of the people who experience bullying and harassment, they tried to use code of silence. And of those who basically reported their issues to the authorities at the institutions, only less than 8% found the process fair and unbiased. And by fair and unbiased, I mean what university did for them was only changing their lab. So there was no healing process involved. So Nature Journal took part of our data to compare the contextual behaviors that basically targets in US and also the US residents feel, and also the international students feel. And like I mentioned, the odds and the severity of the bullying and harassment contextual behaviors are more higher in international students as compared to the domestic scholars. So there are many reasons for targets to not report bullying and harassment and use code of silence. One of them is the scandals that comes to the news. For example, here, Science published a piece on the Harvard anthropology professor who did bullying and harassment, including sexual harassment, for over decades. And there were tens of complaints to the university. Nothing happened to this person. After it came to the news, the university basically forced the person to be retired. So you can imagine what kind of signals such a report can send to perpetrators and also to targets. For perpetrators, it would be received as, okay, the university will cover me up, at least for a couple of decades. And it sends a very negative signals to targets that perpetrators are being protected, and targets are the one who should pay the price of speaking up. So that's why they are kind of forced to use code of silence. The other issue is that even in these cases, we rarely see any outcomes or any statement from the members of the internal investigation committee that how tens of the reports and complaints were ignored or were covered up during the process. So, like I mentioned, the main problem comes from the fact that we have limited accountability over the people that are internally involved in the investigation of bullying and harassment. So again, we asked targets to kind of provide their narratives, and we did content analysis on those. And as expected, we saw that fear of retaliation among the targets was the main reason that they tried to use code of silence. We also checked whether the hypothesis that whether contextual behaviors of academic bullying and harassment are discipline specific, and the study basically validated that hypothesis, which shows that what is considered as bullying in social science, for example, is totally different from what is considered bullying in engineering departments. So the outcomes is that we need discipline-specific trainings and also disciplinary actions based on the contextual behaviors that we see in a discipline-specific manner to be effective in the area. The other active stakeholders and influential stakeholders in the fields are publishers. So we basically suppose and propose that there are three major issues in our scientific field that they should be considered as a scope of any journals. So these are imbalances in diversity, gender imbalances that we have, the issue of sexual harassment, and also academic bullying. And we have great examples that journal editors basically supported that hypothesis. For example, after the case of George Floyd in the United States, the Journal of ACS Applied Materials and Interfaces from American Chemical Society published a piece titled Confronting Racism in Chemistry Journals. And shortly after that, almost all of the journals of the American Chemical Society published the very same thing. So this is just for the sake of awareness, increasing awareness among the community. So the basically audience in different journals and in different fields needs to have information about bullying and harassment, racism, and imbalances in gender, so journal editors can make a great role in achieving that goal. So now the question is that is these kinds of individual actions by individual stakeholders are efficient? At least from the studies that or outcomes of the incidence of bullying and harassment, we have no evidence that they were basically those actions were sufficient or efficient, or we saw any progresses in the field because of those actions. And what is interesting here is the outcomes of the report of the US National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, where they showed that even if they had all of the required aspects that can limit sexual harassment. For example, the legal aspect, the policies, the education. They have limited evidence that shows that we have significantly less amount of sexual harassment in the field, in any disciplines, after implementation of all of those legal, basically, actions and training actions and educational actions. So this shows to us that what is missing is kind of functional and interdependent collaboration among all stakeholders. This is a missing part in the field of academic bullying as well. So I've talked about the role of institutions and why institutions alone have limited reasons to basically fairly and unbiasedly address to issues of academic bullying and harassment. But imagine if funding agencies come to the equation and cut the funding for perpetrators. Then they put institutions in a better position to better fight the issue of academic bullying and harassment. And this is not something novel. NIH and NSF basically are doing a great work in terms of limiting funding for well-known perpetrators in different institutions. And we also have examples in the actions of the funding agencies in different countries. For example, we have a Wellcome Trust that basically took a large funding from a perpetrator in UK and basically put universities in a better position to kind of do a disciplinary actions. In addition, the Wellcome Trust now required universities to kind of provide the anti-bullying records of the PIs for them to be eligible for funding. The other thing is involvement of the policymakers and gatekeepers in the equations. Like I mentioned, they can basically incorporate the anti-bullying records of the institutions as one item for university ranking. And we also, if we have those involvement of different stakeholders, we probably can emergent of new committees, for example, a global committee that can have access to the outcomes of internal investigation. And they can basically make, they can audit those reports and make the members of the investigation committee kind of responsible for their actions. So we have more transparency in the field. And this is not something novel. We have the successful implementation of such external committee in publishing ethics. For example, we have COPE, Committee of Publishing Ethics, that now almost every journals in the field follow their advice and guidelines on how to consider the allegations of academic misconduct and plagiarism and what steps the journals can take if those allegations are validated. So in this situation, we basically established academic parity movement based on my own experience and many other people in the field. So in 2019, we established academic parity movement with a simple goal that the same human rights that apply outside the lab also apply inside of it. So, and we believe that, like what Einstein said, we cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created that. And that's why we think we need like external entities to be part of the solution of basically putting an end in academic bullying and harassment. So we, at the very earliest stage, we basically find a couple of expert people in the field, mostly from social scientists. And after completing our survey and getting the kind of results, solid results, that academic bullying does not affect all scientists in the same way, we decided to kind of get more of the advisors to the academic parity movement from different disciplines and from different cultures to to better understand the role of culture and also different disciplines and can provide more advice to the targets. So the goals of the academic parity movement, we had a short-term goal on increasing awareness. And for that, we tried to publish about the issue of bullying and harassment in different communities to increase awareness on those communities, because most of the literature that we have are focused on social scientists. So many communities are kind of left out of the discussion and awareness about the issue. So we conducted a couple of global surveys, like I mentioned, to better understand the contextual behaviors of academic bullying and harassment in each disciplines. And we informed various stakeholders about the progresses and outcomes of those global surveys. We also provided external support to targets in different ways. We provided over 2,700, we received over 2,700 complaints of bullying and harassment. We provided over 1,200 informal advice to the targets. And we also, for the stories and narratives that we saw a pattern, we basically made anonymous stories and put that on the website so other targets can basically use them. And we have a bi-monthly newsletter. Starting from 2023, we also started to financially support targets. So when a complaint comes and the case is kind of validated for us, we basically pay for legal advices that targets can get from lawyers, so they can basically understand what they can do about their cases. And in the case that we basically see the healing is essential, we basically refer them to trauma experts to go through the healing process. And we also try to get public support by basically recognizing that academic bullying and harassment can be a violation of human rights. So provide a legal angle to that can basically help other stakeholders to pursue the case and make a stronger basically law and legislation around bullying and harassment. So we think and believe that if we can make finally a platform that all stakeholders can work together, then institutions can basically create a very robust anti-bullying policies in actions. Now, if you see institutions, they have really well-written strategies and guidelines around academic bullying and harassment. But what is missing is that in action, they don't even follow their own guidelines. And we have that problem. We see that problem in many universities. So what we see instead is that when a target basically gets kind of disappointed and hopeless from the university-based resources, and they go to the, like they want to get legal help, they need to pay the legal fees out of their pocket, but the perpetrators are being unfortunately covered by university expenses, and most of them are covered by public money. So this would be stopped. And then in that case, that we have all the stakeholders working together, they can make a positive examples. So the news are not sending only positive signals to perpetrators and negative signals to targets. We have more news about how institutions successfully faced perpetrators after validation of the allegation of bullying and harassment and supported targets. So that put targets in a position that they don't need to use code of silence anymore. And universities can basically have a better monitoring system over their faculties, and also other positions of the power. And I need to emphasize the fact that when I talk about targets of bullying and harassment, it's not only PhD students or postdocs, but also junior and even senior faculty sometimes. So it's not related to the positions, though the frequency of the targets are more in the PhD student, postdoc, and research scholar and the early career scientist much more than senior faculties. And last but not least, providing resources that targets can hit. And finally, I want to emphasize that bullying is bullying, and bullying is bad. It doesn't matter whether it's a conventional bullying or the upward bullying, where sometimes students or a postdoc or a junior faculty tries to bully senior faculties in different ways. So bullying is bullying, and we need to ensure that reporting system remains healthy. So abusers of the reporting systems needs to be disciplined in the same way that we basically try to discipline perpetrators. So this is an important and ignored factor in the field. And just to summarize my presentation, so we talked about the root causes of academic bullying and harassment and the major reasons that we have those root causes and couldn't basically address them so far, and the major side effects of the bullying to the targets, to the people of the circle of their influence, and also to the scientific realm as a whole, and also the need for interdependent and also functional collaboration of all stakeholders to finally put an end on the issue of academic bullying and harassment. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I would be happy to take any questions you may have.